Support for this podcast comes from the patrons at patreon.com/FMLFPL. Okay! Welcome to FMLFPL, Alon.
It's Walsh.
Final FPL pod of the season, dude. Post-Mortem.
Yeah, dude.
Little Law and Order SVU Post-Mortem here. We gotta check the bods. Dead, cold bods.
Get Benson in here.
Yeah. We'll be back. We're gonna take next week off. The huge off season of 1 week off, and then we'll be back Euros potting Monday, June 7th. But before that, anything you want to say about Game Week 38?
Yeah, it was great. It was really nice to have games on concurrently. That's all I'll say.
That was by far the best thing about it.
Miss it some. I mean, we got a taste of it. The Game Week previous, where there were like 2 or 3 games on it.
Yeah,
Just having more than one game to just like, it's just fun to see action coming in on Discord and people watching different games and just hearing the little snippet updates of people watching other games. What's happening? It was so fun. So it was enjoyable. You know, it was nice. What about you?
And obviously fans back in the stands, and even Match of the Day. Like I didn't watch Match of the Day this season. I watched every fucking game. Why would I watch Match of the Day? You know, if I needed to see highlights, I'd quick like YouTube highlights it or something.
They have Match of the Day?
Yeah, they always do for the last day, and it's nice. They like for the Champions League race, for example.
No, I mean, did they have Match of the Day throughout the whole season?
Oh yeah.
That's nuts.
Multiple times a week, like normal, even though the season was abnormal. But yeah, the final match of the day was great. Just a little bit of normalcy. Yeah, it was nice. It was good.
And your team. Hey.
Yeah, my team did the thing.
Your team.
So
my team laid down for you.
It was great.
You're welcome.
Boy and
pod
Jurgen,
from one pod partner to another.
Great friends. They definitely had some wine after the game. Like good shit.
Yeah.
Let me do league updates, housekeeping, final league updates.
Wait, I have to shout the Ederson cat.
My god.
Sick.
How good is it? How good is it though? How good is it that your cap is Ederson 24-pointer fucking haul? You've been leaning on it so hard it comes through. And disgusting. I get a double zeros at my keeper. Just DNP, drop, rotation, McCarthy, undroppable.
So lesson to learn. Me spending 8 transfers on goalkeeper this season actually worked.
Huge haul. No, I'm so happy that you had Eddie and Mane and you had a fucking great end to the season. Like seriously.
Yeah. No, I did.
You were 1.58 million Game Week 23 and ended up 330K.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, I mean,
we were all
compare and contrast to me, where I also climbed, but my gains were just so much smaller that the incremental climb in the end was much less, and I ended at 655K.
Yeah.
Easily my worst ever season.
What about your Kuhn cap?
Felt great.
Yeah.
I mean, that warms the heart, right? And that was, it was also like little behind the scenes FMLPL land. I was just zoned in fully Liverpool on my exercise bike, like don't give a fuck about anything else. And then me and you just start texting like the old days.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah, we're not even on Discord. We're just texting. We're just like, you'll text me, I think Bamford just scored, and I'm just like, oh my god, amazing, you know. And then it's like, Kuhn's something on, you know, and I'm like, oh shit, you know, and Kuhn go, Kuhn, you know, just like that. That also doesn't exist when it's one game at a time and everyone's fucking tired and bored and slogging. So Kuhn Cup was great. Kane to Kuhn, fuck it. Right. But yeah, that's Game Week 38. So shout out to the 3 Prize League Mug League winners for May, final mugs of the season. Mahesh, aka Himmy some more, Josh, Michael, aka Essen Chill, and Frode, aka Ognam United. And shout out to the winner of the FMLFPL Public League, Michael Atkins, aka Pedro's Hombres, takes the Public League, OR of 31. Not bad. And then
31.
Yeah, pretty good. And then list of the tier winners in Kev's maniacal head-to-head Discord Patreon subscriber leagues. He asked me to do it. I'm here for it. Tier 1, Aiden, Eric B, Private KY, Tim, Scatterfold, Roadie Base, Derek won his tier, obviously. Keycon Jim, The Great Wild Gamu, Alex Malik, Kuhn, and Waduaku or something. He said, full list of promotion relegation already posted in Discord. New entrants welcome next season. Everyone keep an eye on your DMs once the game launches next season so you can register your tier quickly. Good job by Kev. Moving on. So this is the post-mortem. This is the season review. We talk about what happened. We talk about what we learned, etc. The thing that I wanted to start with is just not necessarily like what did we learn, but I was.
What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about what I'm talking about. Yeah, you're doing to me. I was thinking, one thing that I kept thinking about is like, what can you even learn from season to season? Because I listened to last year's Post-Mortem just to kind of get the vibe. I need to always remind myself. And then as I was like looking up stuff, it was a good episode, I think. Yeah, it was a good and then I was thinking about this episode and like major themes, and we have questions and all that shit. And I was just thinking like there's so many differences already just from one Post-Mortem to the other. There's different things that we think, oh, this big valuable lesson that we can take into next season, but every season differs from year to year so much. So I don't even know what can be carried over. And that was Barrick's question. He said, having a few years at FPL under my belt, I realized looking at the game season by season doesn't really make sense given the variance in the metas, team structure, formation, tactics, etc., etc. Instead of looking at this season in a vacuum, what are some common themes and lessons you've learned from all of the FPL seasons you played? And then B. Roberts' question
small
was...
question.
Yeah, just say...
Tell me what happens when you die?
Yeah, just you're just a casual. In the last 10 years, have you learned any information? And then B. Roberts, what can we learn from the COVID year and what can we unlearn from the COVID year? For example, picking last week's points, successful strategy this season, deep benches, necessity, home advantage was gone, Jesse Lingard was a good player. What learnings from this year stand out as useful and what should we try to forget? So, yeah, I mean, obviously, so much to tackle, but what came to mind for you immediately?
For me, it was like the clean sheets for middle to bottom half teams at home, like, seemed to be a dying breed. Like when we were in the past, like where home fixtures mattered, and we, usually would like those kind of 4 or 5 defenders where you could rotate and play them at home. We didn't see that because every game was a training ground game. So I think that was something that, I'll want to not remember. Like, you're just tracking like the top defenders, and it's a lot of just like the ones that got a lot of attack, obviously, but the Burnleys, the Palaces, like those clean sheets that, when they're at home against another bottom half team, like with the crowd and the things, that it's like a little bit better. So I think that we need to that was just the first thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just scrolling through the defenders' top scores right now. The only guy in the top, like, I don't even know what this is, 20? That's from a bottom half team is Dunk.
Dunk, yeah. And he scored, fucking 5 goals, yeah.
Yeah, and then the next is Tarko at 109 points.
Yeah.
He scored 143 the season before, for those not looking. So, yeah, that's definitely a big one. Home away, I think, in general, is something that, like, we should have probably started ignoring earlier in this season and didn't adapt to.
I agree with that completely.
And I brought it up last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, when someone was asking, like, can we take advantage of fans in the stands for the last 2 game weeks? And we were both like, no, it's like, it's nothing. Yeah. It's one game. But my example still stands of Liverpool, right? It's like they haven't had a home season this bad since like the 30s. Like, they're notorious for being dominant at home, especially under this team and this manager. And then they have this season, and it's like, I don't want to learn that. Going into next season, they'll probably be good at home again. Yeah, like United undefeated away on the season, but dog shit at home. Like, no, that's not going to carry over. That just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so that I think is a throwaway.
Yeah.
Okay. What else? Anything else that you're...
Well, Arturito on Twitter, this guy wrote in, and me and him just must have had the same reads and same teams in a lot of situations. But he said, when a player has an injury, we should forget about him until he shows up on the pitch. Managers never tell us the truth about injuries, period. I sold Justin on my first wild card. Shout outs to me, because Pereira was supposed to be back soon, and some people started with Ferguson from Palace. Just like the pressers get less useful every season. It's an exercise. I don't really know why we even participate in it. I think it's the type of like psychological thing where we're looking for something to confirm what we want.
Confirm a bias.
Yeah, confirm a bias through a presser. Whereas if we just ignore them altogether, we'd probably do better.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly are going to see the ones where, it's a clear-cut thing, right? Where it's like, this player, it fucked himself in training. And
he's out for a month.
In general, when you're looking for things to read between the lines, like, you just stop, I think, at that point. Yeah. And it's, like, annoying, too. The whole concept of the presser is, like, very antiquated, where it's like, they do it so that, these newspaper men can like get a story and a headline out before the game starts. Like, newspapers don't exist. Like, why do they do these? Like, the
embargoed ones. Oh my god!
Like, then there's it's like, just stop doing this. Like, just just change it, whatever. But it doesn't matter. But yeah, I think that's definitely one where it's just like, is Ings coming back? Like, okay, get rid of players who are hurt. Don't get them until they actually play a minute. Yeah. Like, that kind of thing is you're not going to go wrong there.
Right.
Not going to go wrong. And we've talked about that a lot too before, like where you don't have to be the first buyer. You can be the second buyer.
It's probably
the risk is bigger.
It's to be the first buyer.
Yeah, because you're absorbing so much risk there. So
yeah. So I definitely agree with that. And then the other thing that came to mind when I was reading the questions was just, well, it was a weird season. There was a Twitter thread. I posted it in our Discord, like stats and links from who got the assist guys.
I have that channel muted.
Oh, really? I post shit there sometimes. Okay. It was a good thread. It was a short thread about basically like there were less 200-point scorers in the game this season than any in the last 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But it was the highest scoring season in 5 years. There was a lot more in the middle. There were more 100-point scorers, and there were a lot, and there were more double-digit hauls than the other seasons too. Okay. And again, this goes back to me saying like every season's different. There are seasons when there's a bunch of heavy hitters who all score over 200 and bouncing between them and hitting the caps on them. Great. That's probably great for that season. Yeah. What those numbers that who got the assist guys put up means to me is like, well, we didn't adapt to this season, because really what we should have done is
I never adapt to this season.
I never adapt either, but
let's be real here.
It doesn't mean that's wrong. What I said is wrong.
Right,
we didn't adapt.
You're right.
But really what that means to me is like the way to do well this season would have been keep your 2, 3, 4 max heavy hitters and bounce around on the cheap guys. Yeah. That's who did well, right? Like that's
I did that. I didn't do well.
You did that with
I had Mo for like 38 weeks.
Two guys.
I had Sun for like 36 weeks. I had a few, but how many guys fit in that category? It's got to be 2 or 3.
Okay, I did do research for this pod. I put the work in.
Let's hear it, baby.
So my sample is you and me, ranked number 1 in the world, winner of the public league, so ranked 31, and then my brother's team, aka my Smurf team, 50K, okay. Which just felt like a middle of the pack sort of like this is.
What'd you find out?
So players who played more than half the season in our teams, so 19 game weeks or more in our teams. You had Mo 36 played, Sun 29 played, and then Bruno 19 played. That's it. Okay. I had Mo 27, Emmy 25, DS 21, Bamford 21.
Okay.
But the other people who are better than us and did a fucking lot better than us have so many more. Kane 32, Mo 31, Bamford 28, Sun 24, Bruno 24. All those numbers are high.
Yeah, that's nice.
Mo 32, Bruno 30, Kane 24, Soup check 23 off the bench oftentimes, DCL 22. Those kind of numbers, it's the same concept as the season before that we talked a lot about the glue guys. Like you need to find your Jimenez, your fucking whatever, your 6'5" guys that you hold all season. They're just good. It's the exact same concept. It's just the price is reversed. Right. It's like this season's glue guys were actually just Kane, Mo, and Bruno. or Sun, interchange with Sun, whatever.
There weren't a lot of heavy hitters, period.
Yeah, period. So those were the glue guys versus like you look at mine, right? Like I had Mo 27 was my most. I didn't start with him in game week 1.
Look at me with Mo. Though. I'm proud of
36.
myself.
36. Amazing.
I'm so proud of myself. And what he didn't play one game, right?
Yeah,
so there were only 37 eligible.
You transferred him out in in game week 9 when he was COVID.
Yeah.
And then you brought him right back into game week 10. And then you didn't have him on like your free hit. That was it.
I love that. I
love that.
Fucking love myself.
If we did that more,
I could have finished 8 million.
Yeah, we'd be so much better if we did that more. Like, so what I was going to say, me with Mo, who's my most played player. I didn't start with him game week 1. He had fucking leads. I didn't get him on game week 3 wild card. I brought him in game week 6. I transferred him out game week 9. I brought him in game week 12. And then I had him the rest of the season.
Yeah. You realize that game week 12, not doing this anymore.
Right. So Mo and Son, you had them forever. Bruno is your next. He's the highest scoring player in the fucking game this season.
He can die.
You transferred him in game week 2. You transferred him out in game week 5 wild card. You transferred him in game week 11. You transferred him out in game week 27 wild card.
That's a recipe for disaster.
It's just a disaster. What are we doing to ourselves? And obviously you don't have a keeper up there like that. Well, that's known.
I used all the transfers on keepers.
Yeah, like I at least have Emmy and Diaz for like some respectability, but like the amount of transfers that you
How many keepers did I play this year? Like 7?
I'll look next time you speak. I'll look.
It's got to be about 7.
I think I have it open actually right here. Yeah, let's see. Okay, let's see. So I'm going through. Scroll. Pope 13. Scroll. Mendy 8. Ryan 7. Leno 6. Yeah, Maddie Ice.
Forster got in there, right?
Yeah, I'm still scrolling. There's got to be more. Ederson 3. Is
that it?
It might
6?
be. I'm still scrolling.
All right.
A lot of guys. And there's like Gibbses and shit. Yeah, there's a lot of guys who featured in Team Walsh this season.
I got to get Kieran in there. So, a little bit.
Yeah, that's it. That's 5.
All right.
You had Steele on the bench 21 times, Kepa on the bench 6 times, Forster on the bench 5 times.
We don't need to get into the muck.
Still muck. 5. A lot. That's a lot.
It's 4 too many.
Yeah, it's 4 too many. Like the ideal is, right, it's like one guy, wild card, maybe keeper, don't keep.
Next
one guy, next wild card, keeper, don't keep. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's the ideal. But on that note, I mentioned this on last week's pod. There were only 4 keepers who started 38 games this season.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, and this was the same thing we've seen this year. Is like the rotation is definitely like a thing. Like it's happening more and more and more. There's just more games. Less time off and more international things. Like there's just a lot of action going on. So I was wondering too, because someone said something about JWP in Discord about like, wow, he played every minute of the season this year.
Yeah, I think you're like first midfielder, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess, Souček sort of fell in this line too, which is maybe like a little bit of a better, case, but just like the idea of picking someone like that and putting them first on your bench for like the whole year. And, you're absorbing a little bit of extra money in that spot, but you can then have a non-player in your team, whether it's your third forward or your fifth defender. So you're going to save a little bit there. So it kind of would come out even, but
it almost makes it even, right?
Yeah, like structuring your team that way next year, might be a good thing. Cause we've been talking a little bit about, importance of a bench. And I know this year I had a good, I'm just something wrong with me, obviously, personally, but I had a good like month or two where I had a diabolical piece of shit coming off the bench and or was not getting 11 men like for a long time. And it was bad. And that's like me. That's my bread and butter. Yeah. But just having someone like Souček just first on the bench, like don't have to worry about, so you are playing with that extra, piece of security. I mean, I like that. That's something that I was thinking about since, Game Week 38 about, next season trying to be able to do that.
Right. Yeah, it's actually interesting. Like, you had 19 auto subs on the season for 45 points. Seems really fucking
horrible.
Really fucking bad. I mean, bare minimum should be 2.
That's 2 a game, basically.
Yeah. But
What'd
the
you have
guy
on that?
of this list that I made with these 5 teams, the rank 1 in the world guy had the most auto subs by a lot. He had 32.
Wow. Well, was he? But I don't do the bench wanking because if you bench wank, you can add up 20.
I guess he might have. I didn't look back, but he had 32 for 118 points. I had 20
That's deceptive, though. That's an actual deceptive thing. You need to look back because
I didn't.
Think about how many blanks there were. Like if people put the blanks, like you put Mo on the bench, like people do that shit. Right.
Well, at least I know that we didn't, and my brother's team didn't, so it's still useful.
What'd you have?
I had 20 auto subs, so only one more than you, but I had 64 points. So it's like still bad, but an extra point
not that
per
bad.
Auto sub. Yeah, I guess like 3-ish
3
is pretty good.
I mean, it's not a starter.
Pereira milked that for me. He bumped that average up so high.
Because, I mean, it's not a starter, so it's like your 12th guy shouldn't be getting more than 3 points a game.
My brother's team did exactly what you said, right? Supchek was his 4th most played player, 23 played.
Yeah.
17 auto subs for 79 points.
Yeah, I mean, that's like
it's ludicrous, but like also not lucky, really. Like that was
smart.
Yeah, that was like an actual viable tactic.
Yeah.
And he just did it. I did it.
I mean, you need to get obviously lucky when you have that, and then the weeks that it comes in that whatever. Sure. But even if they're returning at a 1 in 3 rate like Supchek, and you're like looking at a 33%.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just increasing your odds. Like versus if the player coming off is Kieran Gibbs, who's gonna get 1 point every, whatever, that kind of thing.
Smith Rowe or not nailed fucking Mitchell or whatever it is.
The amount of games that I had Smith Rowe coming in for, granted he got me a lot of points in the double game week, but a lot of times he came off the bench for 1 or 2 points for me. It's just it just feels bad, it just feels fucking bad. So I think that's something I'm gonna try and be disciplined about. It's that's the thing that's so hard. You benched him 14
times, but he came in 5 times. You started him 5 times, or he played 5 times.
Yeah, that's a lot of times.
And he averaged 5.8 points. I guess he spiked it at the end. Yeah,
the double was 20. So
yeah.
It's just so hard when we come back to the new season and we're tinkering, and we always view it with like this is going to be the time it's different, and. Putting extra money in these places when you could, shed 0.5 here, shed 0.5 there, and, get like the defender from Everton instead of like Brighton. And like, I like my team so much more. It's like that like might not be enough better than having a good bench guy compared to a dog shit piece of shit.
And then the other side of the coin is who knows what next season's going to present us. Yeah, there might be a 4-0 who's incredible,
like
and
Cundilinho.
Yeah, Cundilinho, and everyone just starts him every week because he's just so good.
I mean, that was like the 1B year.
Yeah, and what's his name? Lundstrom also was just like
Lundstrom.
Fucking get in immediately. Yeah. So that's why that's why I wanted to start with like what can you learn, because it does seem like I think those kind of things are sometimes like that happened this season. There were tons of cancellations and COVID and auto subs and blanks, and like that's what happened this season. But that doesn't mean that happens every season. So
I think that we were obviously baseball's like our first kind of
like my DeGrom show.
Yeah, I mean that's like where we come into things and how we viewed. That's where we kind of view sports through that lens. And we were talking about, on Billy's pod with Theo, talking about Theo Epstein is like, won a couple World Series.
No one knows who he is.
General manager of a couple different teams, won a couple World Series in Chicago and Boston, whatever. And, he's one of the smartest sports minds I've ever heard speak.
Easily.
And, the main thing that he's talking about is that like we don't know anything. Like we know like 3%, and we're just trying to like kind of barter and deal in the shadows of not knowing a lot of stuff, and that I think resonates with FPL, and I think it's like every season we do this, right? We do the finish and the beginning and the thing that, and we try to like make links to and they're, you know, frankly, they're just not that many. Like there are little like pieces of kernels that you can kind of think of like, oh, there's a correlation. Like, I mean, like Cresswell, right? Like talking about, well, okay, those set pieces, like, well, I'm sure we'll get there. But when you can find those little kernels of things, it's like, you know, even like goalkeepers, like, oh yeah, like, well, the goalkeepers that are on these types of teams who let up shots, like they do this, they're cheap. Like those are the things that you try to like replicate, which makes sense. But in general, it's like, you know, you can't, you know, sit here and be like, oh yeah, like, well, when whoever like is like Lingard next year, like after he scores 2 weeks straight, I'm going to buy him. Like, it's like, you know, you can't do that. And it's just kind of like accepting that we don't know that much. But then also I think coming into like your intuition about, you know, seeing things and like feeling patterns and, you know, being reminded of those kind of things and years pass and having those things just like reside in your like, you know, muscle memory or whatever. Your gut.
That's what I was going to say. This is kind of what trust your gut means, right? Because there's far too much information in the last 10 years, in the last 20 years of us following sports, 25 years to actually recall and like, you know, present as like a memory or a fact or whatever. But your gut is a weird amalgamation of all of that information.
Yeah. And I think it's like, that was just, it's like with like Everton defense, right? Like at the end of the year, that's something that gave me so many points where I'm just like, you know, when you watch a team play a certain way, like so many times, and you're just like, okay, like, no, I don't care about DCL or Rich. Like they just don't create chances, but they're tight, you know? And it's like, I don't really like, okay, the stats or whatever, the fixtures are so good for goals. It's like, but they just don't do it. And 1-0, 2-0, like what, they don't ever score more than 2 goals. It's like, and, you know, just being able to kind of push away, it's like push those things out of like, oh yeah, Sheffield United, Newcastle, like West Brom, like so many goals. And then it's just like 1-0, 2-0, 1-0. And it's like, oh yeah, like that's not how this team, you know.
Still Everton. Yeah.
And it's like, you know, even things like now, it's like you said, with so much information, right? It's like, well, okay, well, the left flank of Leeds, they let up so many more chances than the right flank, or like Fulham down the spine have more shots conceded than on the right. So like Kane's better than, it's like, fuck out of here. It's like, what do you like? Just
more
think about the game
than ever. You know, there really is.
It's like thinking about the game in the way that you think the game's gonna kind of work out, and you know what feels like like I feel, I don't know. I think that's it's tough to balance it. Obviously, the stats are helpful, but then it also can get prescriptive, where you're just like kind of following like a zombie.
And the stats are also what, 50 years behind something like baseball in terms of like, I mean, you know,
who knows
how far along into advanced stats, like how much they know, how much data they have, etc. Like maybe 100 years. Like I don't even, baseball's existed for so long. Like, and it's a stop-go 1v1 sport, basically, you know, whereas like soccer is the most like fluid, dynamic, high variance, low event sport. So it's just, no, I agree with that. It's a lot of good stuff from Theo Ep there, Daddy Epstein. Let's go to the bandwagons, the unsustainable bandwagons. We've talked about them through the end of the season, but got some questions here. So Jeff, he said, you touched on this already during the season, but I'm wondering if you have any fresh thoughts on how to get better and bringing in the players who are scoring points, even when the source of those points seems unsustainable. I feel like my season was defined by my refusal to get guys because of some narrative about their output not being sustainable. For example, Spurs are scoring all their very few weird chances. They don't create anything else. It's always Kane to Son or Son to Kane. They can't keep this up. Or it's Gundo. He can't keep doing this. They couldn't keep up their output, but I missed on so many points. Just yelling C when they dropped off wasn't very satisfying. And then Paul M followed up, like, in the end, I didn't even enjoy my moral superiority in refusing to buy Gundo and Lingard and Willock. Some on Twitter, too. Red Arrow said, how much time should we look at to identify form in a player? I'm thinking Lingard, Iheanacho, DCL before we jump on. And then also Jewel Runner and Pratiek asking about when to jump off. So just, you know, I think we have kind of like laser focus on this last like 10 game weeks or something about the bandwagons. But what have you gathered anything, you know, going into next season and stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I think the main issue with it is that, when you're looking for like the stats based like sustainability, you're literally never going to find that, right? Because when you're talking about a bandwagon, you're not talking about Kane, right? And think about a player like Kane where the underlying stats are like he shoots 6 times a game for, I'm obviously pulling that out of thin air, but like when he's doing the things, like he has all of them, right? And bandwagons are bandwagons because they're not like the best player, like Mo. Like we don't need like look at Mo's stats. Like it doesn't matter. Like you watch the game and you have the years back of history. That's why he's a premium player. That's why he's like a heavy hitter, right? So I think it's like you shouldn't look at stats when you're looking at like Gundo or Lingard, right? And instead you just watch like how is the team playing? What's his positional role? And like, can this happen for the next month or two?
Right.
And if the answer is like, I think it might, then you probably should just buy the player because form is obviously a fleeting, like a figment of our imaginations. And it's just like, they could be like fucking their side piece for 2 months and they're just so happy and they're just scoring it with their shot instead of like not scoring with their shot when they're, not fucking their side piece. I don't know. But it's like when you're looking for the stats to like back it, like the stats aren't going to back it because this isn't Kane. This isn't Mo. This is fucking Leandro Trossard. Like this is like fuck it,
What I was going to say with the stats is exactly that. But what I do think the stats can tell you is like they can be indicators of potentially what's happening. Like in the same way that you were saying, like if you look at something and they score a goal and you're like, can this happen? I think like what we've seen with these players, in particularly like Gundo, Nacho, Bale, more than like Lingard and Willock, is like their stats were kind of off the page, but it was just for 2 games.
Right.
And it was just like, well, Gundo's a DM, so that's just not going to happen. He's not going to keep shooting 6 times and be in the box for every big chance, but it did. Right. And it sustained for,
2 months.
12 game weeks. In 12 game weeks, he scored 70.7% of his points.
Yeah, that's insane.
But that's all of these guys. I did that for all of these guys. Lingard, 11 game weeks, only 10 matches because one of them was United.
Yeah.
84% of his points.
Yeah.
Iheanacho, 15 weeks. His is different because he wasn't even playing, but that's 90.9% of his points. Bale had like 2 extremely short stretches because he's fucking injured in Bale. He had 3 matches where he scored 31% of his points and 6 matches where he scored 38% of his points. And then the last one, Willock, and it was just all end of the season, basically all of his points. But yeah, I do think like it is important to look at the stats to just sort of reinforce what you're seeing or potentially seeing even. But yeah, in the end, it's like you said, and I totally agree, it's never going to be sustainable. You're never going to see like a shot on target percentage that's like, oh yeah, this is realistic from a guy that's probably not going to continue it for the whole season. He has to be running crazy hot. And I think, again, like the Theo, I'll put it in the show notes if people want to listen, but the Theo Epstein podcast that you were just referencing before, like he talked about confidence and vibe and like the player, the mood, the locker room, the psyche.
The
like, I mean, he put it so simply when he said like, well, how is your mood affected at work? If you go into your office and it's fucking shitty and unorganized and you have a prick for a boss and an annoying coworker that you sit next to versus like something you care about and believe in and you like your boss and you're friends with your coworkers, like how does that affect you? A lot, so sometimes, you just gotta go for them, I think is really my takeaway from like 10 years of FPL is sometimes it just fucking happens, and that's it.
I mean, and then also, which is the difficult thing is where you started off talking about, right? That idea of the glue guys, right? Where the glue guys, like this year, were really the premium players. Yeah. And these guys to jump on and off are these, mid-price players versus the seasons past where, the glue guys are like Jimenez or whatever, right? Those mid-price players so that you could, hop on and off. It's like, it was like a little bit of a different game this year.
Yeah, if this was like the thing that you would change to make this a slightly more normal season wouldn't be, I don't think, more glue guys. It would just be more heavy hitting options. You know, like if Mane was hitting all season and Kev and Sterling and, you know, Vardy, whatever. Because then
Kev played half a season.
But he didn't score the points to show it, is what I mean. Mane played the whole season.
He had 18 returns. I mean, he did get a lot of returns. He just didn't play that many games.
Right, but yeah, I mean, like, I know glue guy a whole season ownership or whatever.
Yeah.
But there were glue guys this season. There's Bamford, there's Ollie, there's DCL for the first half of the season. You know, there's Leeds all over. The Leeds defenders, Leeds midfielders, like whatever, all over the place. They're just, it was just hard to adjust to the
Grealish for a while.
Yeah, the lack of heavy hitters is really what's the big change. But yeah, and then as for getting rid of them, I mean, in my head, I've just basically accepted that, like, you just have to treat each player and situation differently. And these guys, like, from this season, as soon as they don't look good,
two blanks, 2 bad games, just fucking get rid of them.
Just get rid immediately.
Yeah.
Like, in almost none of the cases were you punished. I don't really remember a time of getting punished in that. They basically all, like, price rose like crazy, 1 million transfers in, like, blah, 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 and then they just fell off.
Yeah, except for Vardy in Game Week 38.
Right, 2 pence.
Yeah.
And, I mean, so that's being more ruthless, right? Just being more ruthless. Don't get attached and just be like, these are punts who I didn't expect to sustain. Yeah.
Thanks for the points while I got you.
Yeah.
Couple bad games, you know, who's the next, like, good looking guy?
Right. And the thing is, and again, you correctly brought up the glue guys or lack of glue in this weird season. It's like you need to have the transfers to spend on these guys.
Yeah, and if you're putting out other fires, then you're not going to be able to, you know, do the Lingard.
If you're yo-yoing Mo and Bruno out of your team,
or if you have like 5 or 6 keepers in 38 game weeks, it's tough.
You're not getting the guys, like, because you don't want to. You especially don't want to hit in these guys because they're fucking
because they could disappear. They could disappear when you buy them. Like they could start being bad immediately when you buy them.
And then you have to get rid immediately because the same rule applies.
Yeah,
but it is almost comforting in a way to be like, man, I could have had like 180 more points if I just jumped on these 2 guys a little bit sooner. You know, like wow, my rank wouldn't have even been that bad just from doing 2 moves a little bit earlier than you did them. You know, it's like, it's pretty wild how much it affects it. But I mean, that's a big one from this season for sure. And there were other guys that were like sort of on the list, but none of them as big as these ones, I think. That's that. We got a couple Man City questions.
Any good ones?
Yeah, they're okay. Yeah, Paul Limey said, "Are minutes the most valuable FPL stat?" Which that's a good question on its own. But then he said, "It seems like Pep has reached his final Super Saiyan form of rotation this year, when literally no one had played often enough." Would you consider going without any of their players next year, even though they'll probably win the league again? And then M. Bear said, "Do City players actually score enough points for us to justify their required funds on the bench to cover for their rotation?"
Well, I mean, that's partially not true, right? That's kind of some recency bias there when they walked the league for the last 10 game weeks and they had other competitions that are more important, right? So let's put that where it belongs. It's obviously always worth the risk. Like, this team scores points for fucking fun. And, you know, part of it is just also being lucky, right? Being lucky of, you know, getting the right guy in for the right month or 2 stretch where they, you know, bang in the Gundo points. You know, I think you're just kind of foolish if you just disregard completely, because the rewards are worth the risk here when you push the buttons the right way. Unlike, you know, Leicester, for example, just throw a random team out there that you could ignore and be fine doing. You know, Diash played every fucking minute he could handle in the league, you know, until it was wrapped up.
Probably my best move of the season.
Yeah. So, you know, I think categorically or doing something like that's a little bit, you know, you don't have to go there, but it's still you prepare yourself, right? You're going to get the guy, he's going to not start sometimes. And, you know, that's, you know, again, right. It makes it that much more important that you do have like someone somewhat decent on the bench to come in. If you're running 2 City attackers, you better fucking have a guy who's going to be first on the bench who you're not going to want to, shoot yourself in the foot if he comes in.
Yep.
So I think it's just that's how you have to look at it.
Yeah, and the worth it thing also is just one of the most common misunderstandings of this game is that you have to spend all of your budget to have the best team. And we just know that isn't true. Just accept that going in, that maybe spending 6 on your first guy on the bench is actually fine. And then build your team, so you just have to know that.
And it's like the more too, because like I couldn't have tuned out more of like what people were talking about in the FPL world as the end of the season.
We don't do that.
And
much.
I did so much better.
Yeah, I know.
Like in the beginning of the season when I'm sitting there like fucking panic stations, like, oh my God, like everyone has this player, like I have to get him, or everyone is not doing this, like everyone's captaining this player, like if I don't captain this player, I'm fucked. Like when I just started captaining Bale for hat tricks and captaining like, guys who no one is captaining, but like I just like see something or I just feel something, like I just like not only feel better, but I do better. So, I mean, doing that at the beginning of the season too seems like something
let's go there, because that was another one of the main topics that people asked about, and it's important, the start of the season and falling behind and stuff like that. And we got 3 questions all related. Ray said, is there value going extremely safe to start the season? Every season's so unpredictable, it seems smart to not overthink it. For example, 2-3 attackers managed by Fat Frank. What about 15 nailed known quantities and a game week 1 bench boost? Well, the bench boost, ignore that, we'll talk about that in preseason maybe, but... And then Chuck followed up. He said, to feed off Ray's question, is it better to start the season with high EO guys and make your moves from the template as the season progresses? For example, this season, if you fell behind early season Kane and Sun hauls, it became nearly impossible to recover and rank. And lastly, LR said, I think you boys are heavily eye test reliant like me. That and the other trends mainly emerge after 10 or so weeks, which is when we start zagging in other directions. Is that why going safe at the top works? Also, just thinking if you have a terrible start, it might lead to trying too hard, at least for me, to correct bad starts, try and shortcut away that leads to poor decision making. So you were just talking about your start. Well, you were talking about how you ended so well and how you could use that at your start. But I do think there's some validity in just like, give me the most vanilla team ever game week 1, because our strengths are finding the other guys later. Almost. You know what I mean? Like, I want to just be with the pack. Like, just keep me in the peloton and we'll break away later.
But I feel like we usually do kind of do that.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I really do. Like, I think our game week 1 kind of teams in general, like, we have like maybe 2 players in there that are like fucking mad shouts that no one has. Like, DCL this year, or like Gomes that year, or something like that. Right. But I think in general, like, we're pretty safe. I mean, you didn't have Mo this year, which would be like, I had Mo and like I had all the things. Like this year, it was guys, just like
though. You had team. I'm
Jota.
Looking at game week 1. You had Timo, Kai, Trossard, Obbs, Jota.
Yeah, well, Obbs was in every team this year.
What?
Obbs was in every team in game week 1. Remember when he had Fulham in the other one, the first 2 games?
2.8 million selected by. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But Werner, Kai, Trossard, Jota, like that's pretty.
Yeah,
that feels pretty punty,
you got a couple of things over here, whatever. But I think in general, it's like, I think there isn't. I don't think this is a thing that you can make a rule though, because it's the same thing every year where it's like, okay, we also have like Trent Robbo game week 1 because like, they shat points last year and they're fucking nightmares. Like the year before, it's like, Man United, they kept 20 clean sheets. Like, let's get 2 of them. They were fucking nightmares. Like Chelsea, we did the same thing with Chelsea a few years ago, right?
But I think the point is that that's okay if everyone else is suffering the same things.
But I don't care about everyone else. Like, I think that
that's what your rank is, though. Like, I don't care either, but I want my rank to be better.
But I still want to, like, I think it's still like a balancing act of, picking some guys that have that are safe, but you also want to like, cause Trossard got a bunch of points for me in the beginning, but like Jota never played a game for Wolves and that was a fucking lunacy. Yeah. But like, I think you need to get lucky. Like, I think you need to shoot some shots there and get lucky if you see something that you like to go for it in game week 1 also, because
I don't know.
Because no Game Week 1 team had fucking Sun and Kane. It was the Game Week 3 teams that had Sun and Kane, and then they flew. You know, I mean, that's the thing. Is like, that's also almost like a recency bias. Literally no template teams had either of them, right? Like, they weren't in either team.
I don't know.
And everyone was like, okay.
Right now.
Everyone's like, okay, well, Man United and City, they don't play Game Week 1, so you have to get them Game Week 2. Like, everyone was just like, how do I jockey? Like, who do I want? How do I position?
Kane was under 1 million picked Game Week 1. And Son was 1.7 million picked, actually. So not crazy punty.
Yeah.
That's pretty high.
I mean,
actually.
it's still...
But, yeah, no one had Kane. Yeah. And then he got that goal and 4 assists in Game Week 2.
Yeah, I mean, and that's luck. Like, there's an element of luck. And then there's like, okay, well, he did the huge, enormous thing with 5 goals. And then, you know, 1 million people bought him, and then he just kept doing it. And, you know, then that just is a runaway train. So,
that's
there's got to be
a different discussion, right? Because we're talking about transfers there. Like, if everyone started with Kane and we didn't, and he had the season that he had, then I would be like, yeah, that was obviously just a huge mistake.
Yeah.
And we should have just started with the guy, the obvious guy.
Right. Okay.
That's a different thing. It's like we should have jumped on the bandwagon is like a weird word because we're using it for the unsustainable guys and like the superstars. But
no, we should have just got him.
We should have just got them because they're good players and they've always been good players. And if Kane's fit, he's really good. But in terms of like, I don't know. Let me look at my Game Week 1 team, see what fucking psycho picks I have. I had Justin, who was actually great. KWP. I had Ali, Pulisic.
Well, he's nailed.
Timo. We both had Timo.
Well, we all. I mean, that was.
And then I went Mane over Mo.
Yeah. Well, like, that actually didn't end up being terrible because you captained him in Game Week 2,
and he got a brace. But
he got the same points but it's still like
Then it was terrible. From that point on,
you lost 5 points, and then he was bad. Yeah.
And then I had to use a transfer to get him to Mo eventually because obviously Mo is inevitable.
For sure.
So I do think there is some validity, and I do think it's a little bit boring and a bummer, but it's something that I'm interested in trying because again, I just think like if I could have just hung around longer, not been, basically 3 million for the first 17 game weeks of the season, just hung around a little longer, I could have maybe had a similar shaped ending, but from a better starting point,
Yeah, but I mean, this is the same. I mean, for me, like I had like a 200K. I was like 200K after the first game. Like I had a fucking bang. I was like, wow, this is gonna be my best season I've ever done, and I immediately plummeted and tanked from there onward.
Yeah,
and it's like then to me, it's like okay, I did pick a really good Game Week 1 team. Obviously, I just didn't adapt appropriately. Like I didn't do a good job from there.
But let's look at what happened. You captained a hat trick in Mo in Game Week 1.
Right.
That was that was the majority of your points. And then you had to take a hit to get rid of some of your punts. Immediately, Game Week 2 hit. That didn't help, like
I got you.
It comes back to it, so.
I don't like that you're throwing facts at me.
Well, this is what happens when I do the research.
I prefer it if you didn't know this.
But it's kind of hilarious. If Game Week 2, you hit out Jota Kai already, because it's just like, well, fuck me. They're not playing. I
had a player who was transferred out and a right back who was an A5 fucking mid, so I had to.
Oh, my God. At least you got in Bruno before getting him out on your wild card 3 weeks after that.
Don't even worry about that, bro.
God damn it. And then, Kane, the live FPL has a great save your season data thing, and they have this player analysis.
I think that's not great. I don't want that. I don't want to save any seasons.
The good part of it is the second tab on the spreadsheet that is player analysis, and it's just simply who helped you the most versus the top 10K. How many points you gained over the top 10K, and how many points you lost versus the top 10K. Kane fucked you so hard. You just didn't own Kane. Yeah, you had him for 5 game weeks or something.
Who fucked who? I didn't get fucked. I was doing the fucking. I knew what I was doing the whole time. I knew what I was doing the whole time. So you were allowing
the fucking to happen?
Yeah. No one fucked me. I'm in charge of it.
It's still fucked.
No, it was not fucked. It was great.
It was great.
Enjoyed every minute of it.
And Son did similarly, but not as bad to me as to what Kane did to you.
Gentle lovers.
Yeah.
Kind lovers. Giving lovers.
Yeah. Yeah. Fucking hell. Yeah, start of the season, always a problem
It's just,
point.
this is this thing that's so sick about it, though, is that, like, you know, the game's going to come out in a couple months again, and it's going to be like, oh my God, like, this is so good.
So good.
So good. And then we're going to have our fucking things, and then we're going to sit here, you know, a few games in the bank, like, wow, we are so bad.
Yep. Well, this is... Okay. Let's go on to just the rando questions, not the category questions anymore. This is probably going to be a 1.5 hour long pod, but we're getting there. So the first question is Noel, very related to what you just said. He said, now that it's over, was FPL worth it this year? And the answer is always yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's the best thing in my life.
That's the thing. It's always yes.
Don't tell my wife, and my kid barely understands English at this point, so we're fine there, but it's just the best thing.
You can whisper it to him when you like tuck him in. Like, oh, FPL, you're going to play one day. It's going to ruin your shit. I'm so sorry. It's going to fuck your whole shit up. Yeah, no, it's always worth it. This season was definitely like the grindiest, for all of the reasons we've talked about, grindiest season. It was tough. It was really fucking tiring and tough at points. And at the end, I'm still like, yeah, can't fucking wait for next year. Hope I do.
Can't wait to see the prices. Who's going to be where, you know, all the
Can't
things.
wait for Euros. We're taking 1 week off. We're fucking, what did I say last week? Gross fantasy perverts. That's what we are. And that's what you are. You fucking listen to our podcast.
You listen to us. Are you kidding me? You're listening to this, you fucking pervert.
You're in our fucking Discord. I know who you are.
We know you.
You're a fucking pervert.
Yeah.
You don't watch Walsh in his fucking bedroom.
You don't want to know about fucking Yilmaz and his record for fucking Turkey? You're going to listen, bitch.
Yeah, I saw you didn't start today, actually. The friendly. So.
No, it was like their B team or something. Okay, it's not a big deal.
Okay. Calm down. Yeah, Chester's just re-emphasizing the importance of avoiding sideways moves. We talked about that already. Quicon Jim, he said, I found Walsh's take on last pod on Salah not being a good explosive captain option rather interesting. Are there other guys whose
how'd that work out?
Genius. Are there other guys whose play style and output appears to be changing to make them less appealing for captaincy or FPL points in general for next season? Tough question. Dude,
yeah, that's a big.
That
big
might be a
pre-cog
preseason question.
Yeah, that's a pre-cogger. We also need to know like who's at what team and who's coaching what team, because you know that whole thing's going to start overdriving after the Euros and shit. So.
Yeah, my Twitter notifications are going to be shut off like very soon. Because once it's rumor season, it's just fucking...
Yeah, it's a fucking headache. It's so disastrous.
It's so bad.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I still don't even know what the conference, championship,
know what that
Conference
is.
America, whatever the fuck that is. I don't know who's in it. USA. I don't know when the game... I don't know what that means. I mean, there are a lot of factors, but we'll definitely cover that. Yeah, we'll definitely cover that.
Jono, in weeks where there's a strong template captain, and this is another thing that we talk about every season.
Same fucking question. I know.
Same question every season, but I still feel like we don't have an answer.
No idea.
Could it be a game theory optimal to always cap a differential pick only if you own the template pick too? Something about only risking missing out on half the points, chasing the upside.
Yeah.
Can someone just link us to an article that someone else wrote about this?
It needs to include math.
Yeah, no, because you have to be a fucking mathematician to even figure this out.
Yeah.
But
I still think you need to just like do the T read and just go with what you feel, because you just gotta pick. I don't think that it's also a good thing in this kind of case to just be prescriptive and just like be an automaton with like, well, when these numbers are the thing, then you do the thing, because
that
you can also
either.
I mean, just because it's like a 56 to 44 doesn't mean that like that's going to be good. Like if you hit the lower percentage a few times and spike some things, then you're fucking flying. There's so much luck with that also. So I think you just gotta like look at the game. You just gotta check yourself and read it and just make a call.
I said this on last year's Post-Mortem. It still holds true. It's also not as important as it feels. For example, you had almost 100 more captain points than my brother's team.
Get fucked.
And you finished 300,000 places lower.
Get
Captains, obviously, if you do really well, obviously the top guys that I took the numbers for,
did he take a minus 24 this year?
So you had 80 points worth of hits. I had 100, clean 100 points.
Clean Honda. All right, bro.
Brother Sam, 16.
Easy.
Rank 31 in the world, 52. Rank 1 in the world, 36.
All right.
So, like, they hit. They take hits.
They hit. Yeah. Hits are fun.
Hits are good sometimes.
Okay.
Worry Painter, a takeaway I have from this season that a lot of the reliable heavy hitters from previous seasons have dropped off with no one replacing them, which left us not a lot of alternatives. Wow, it's like he already listened to the pod. Comparing with previous seasons, there were way less players, around 15 plus goals. Do you think this is one season blip? Or is it City less scoring, having less returns spread out? Is there anybody who might move into being a viable premium option? Seems like there's only a few players who would be confident in getting around 200 points heading into next season.
Yeah. I think, that's the good part of the question, right? That last part, like who's going to make the jump? Who are going to be the potential players who are, 8-5 or lower that are going to be performing like double digit players.
Right.
I mean, I think to me, the most interesting is Villa. Jack, Ollie, they played a full season here. Ollie did, and he definitely looks like he had more than he had on the score sheet. And when Jack plays, they're a different animal. And I think that they could both get into that kind of upper echelon more than they did. I mean, we'll see what the price hikes look like, but those are places. That's a place I'm interested in. And same with Leeds. We have to see who they buy. But if they're going to play a similar style and they're not going to be, they're going to be at 8-5 or lower, all their players again, I'm sure. They're still got mid-table team. It's those two teams to me are the ones that jump out.
Bamford put up 194.
Yeah, he's basically there anyway.
Crazy. Yeah, and Jack on pace for this season for 211.
Yeah. So, those are probably going to be underpriced players. So if you think that what you saw this year was real and they're going to get the price hike, but you feel comfortable that they're going to be able to kind of replicate that, then you're probably going to be in the black on those ones. So,
right.
Yeah. Are there any other teams besides Villa and Leeds? I mean, I shouted, did you have anything in mind?
Well, yeah, two things. I mean, I was going to say the transfer market, just straight up.
We don't know.
We don't know, but it seems that those guys often come in like maybe 0.5 or 1 cheaper. It doesn't always work out. Like in Timo's case, he had a fucking nightmare. But, in Mo's case, he was 9 or whatever.
9.5, I think.
9.5, even though he's a starting forward for Liverpool, So that often presents itself.
Right. He was 9. Holy shit, dude. He was 9.
And he
fucking 45 returns.
the record for goals in the season. Points. He started at 9. Like,
not bad.
That's pretty crazy. But the other one I was going to say is just the underperformers, like Timo,
Raz,
like Vardy, like Raz, like Mane, like Kev. Did Kev?
I don't think Kev. Well, he had all of this, but he still had a lot of points.
I know, but he was the 7th lowest discrepancy of his goal. Yeah. Like if he scored those goals, he would have been a monster, even though he missed time. And so I definitely think the underperformers are a place to look because again, they have a chance of coming in underpriced. And it's probably just a blip. Like you don't just like lose all your finishing ability out of nowhere. That's just like not a thing. So that's what I'm thinking.
I don't know what they're going to do with Kev next year.
I don't know what they're going to do with Kev. I mean, the early rumors are Jack to City. Like what the fuck would they? No, but I'm just saying like for projecting, like what would they do with that price? Like, are they really going to go from 7.5 to 10.5? Like,
no, I don't think he's going to be over like 8.5.
I know. I'm just saying, if that transfer happened, I think they'd have to. They'd have to.
I don't know. We'll see.
And also, like, even someone like Jesus. Like,
what about him?
Again, that's the transfer market thing. We don't know if City are going to buy a replacement striker, but if not, and Jesus is projected to play 3,000 minutes or 2,500 minutes because it's Pep. It's like fucking he's going to score a ton of points.
He played 2,000 this year. He only had 9 and 5. So we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll go. What's next?
I believe in him. Liam said targeting fixtures for captaincy was a big brain strategy this year, but considering how teams change over the season, for example, Leeds, do you need to be more adaptable with our views on which teams we're targeting moving forward? I found myself falling behind the trends, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's just that's a yes across the board in FPL, though.
And I think that's... Like, you have to actually watch the games. Like, I think, like, Newcastle's, like, a really good case here because they went through, like, so many different phases of play.
Had
like
8 seasons this season.
Like, they would have, like, the 3 games where they were inept and completely incompetent, and then all of a sudden they would park and be really tight and good. And then they'd do that for, like, a month or two. And then he'd play, like, an extra attacker for a couple games, and they would be, like, fast and loose again. Like, you need to be able to figure that out and not just say like, oh, they're playing Newcastle like auto cap because Newcastle was kind of a really bad fixture like for a lot of the year, even though you know we get that was the first month and it's like, wow, this is the worst team in the league. Like we can cap against them safely when actually no, that's not how the season was born out. You know.
Yeah, and Leeds obviously a great example.
Yeah.
Like
and then the last 10
games who was paying attention to FPL was capping them towards the end of the season. And early doors if you didn't cap against them. Against them. And early doors, if you didn't cap against them, you were just falling way behind.
Idiot.
Yeah,
they were conceding 4 and 5 actually, like for fun,
6,
for clown shows.
7, like it's just ridiculous. So that's a good one.
But that's just it has to. You have to be just paying attention. Like you just have to be watching. You have to be paying attention.
Yeah, we talked about home and away. We talked about some of this. So last question is LR again. He said, "Make sense of Timo for me. I was always a high chance involvement type of person, but I've been punished this season by Werner and Raz, and at one point KDB didn't finish their chances. How do we balance this chance involvement rate with elite finishing, XG over performance, randomness?"
I mean, there's no, again, to me, there's no generalization here where you can make a rule and apply it to all. Like, you watch Timo, and, you're just watching a broken man for a year. Yeah. And, you don't need to keep, game week 4, game week 7, game week 13, game week 22, he's just continually a fuck up, and you need to just like put that into one place of like, he's a mess, it's not working for him this year, it's not going to happen this year, just put it out of your mind and just kind of forget he's there.
The other thing to remember is half their season was a disaster with Frank Lampard at the helm.
No, totally. But it's just like you're still dealing with like a small sample size of 38 game weeks. Yeah. So you have to just make quicker, more like decisive calls of just like, this doesn't look like it's happening. If I'm proven wrong, it's not going to hurt because no one owns this guy anyway.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Like, just be okay, like getting rid and be okay, missing on some points and being like, you'd rather be like, oh, I was right, and then you buy him after he had 2 braces and he looks like he's good again, rather than like, oh, I was wrong and I held him for 2 months where he scored, 18 points in that time span.
And specifically to LR, who asked the question earlier about, how to start and that affecting his decision-making through the season, I think that's a good example, right? Him and me were keeping and captaining Timo in that run, probably because we felt the need to like chase and catch up to the Kane and Son owners and whatever, more than like actually
you're
just
putting
making
bad
objective,
money before good.
Exactly. Instead of just making the good decision. And if we miss a Timo hat trick, we'll get him back,
It's only you and a couple other dozen of his family members who are going to miss it.
Exactly.
It's okay.
Yeah, the confidence thing is like, it is I love how like unknown it is. It's like a total voyage into the unknown. Because I was even thinking, I watched Match of the Day, and like there was one point where Thiago played this like incredible inch perfect ball to Mo over the top, controls it perfectly, is behind the defense. If he side passed it to Mane, it's a tap in.
Yeah. Why would he do that?
But how could you side pass it to Mane after this season? But actually, like, how could he do that? He just played 37 weeks of like, if I pass this guy, he's going to fuck it up. I have to drag this team over the line if we're going to make Champions League. Like, that matters, Like, that affects players. Timo, I'm sure it's the same, man. Like, they were so bad at the beginning of the season and dysfunctional. It's just like, I got to do it all on my own. I got to score 40 goals this season. Like, blah, blah, blah. It's just, that shit wears you down.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
That's it, man. That's questions. Right. We don't have to do our teams. We don't have to do captains.
All right. How do you think it's going so far?
I think it went well. How did I do?
I'm happy with your performance.
Oh my god, that pause, dude. My life flashed before my eyes.
I didn't expect you to ask me like that. That's like, what are we going to talk about? Same thing happened.
Yeah. Well, the final post-mortem anus slap, last anus slap of the FPL season is Raj Athwal. You're a legend and a god. Get in there. Huge thanks also just to all of our Patreons, all of our Patreon subscribers. You keep the pod up and running. You actually keep the pod up and running. We love to do it. We love you all for letting us do it, supporting
we wouldn't
us.
do it if you guys weren't doing this.
1,000,000% wouldn't do it. I'd be working a fucking 9 to 5. And
we'd be texting during game days.
We would have Pod Boys Text Thread, which is just us, Derek, Jason, and Nate. That's it. That would be FPL. And also, my rank would be like 600,000 places higher. But that's besides the point. But yeah, we wouldn't be doing this without you. So thank you so much to everyone. Seriously.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you all.
And with that, I will ask you the final question. Any last words?
Well, that was a good job by you today, buddy.
And I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Absolutely see you tomorrow.
Check us out at FMLVL.com. Follow us on Twitter at FMLVL Sports page on.com/FMLVL. Subscribe, rate, review, and cheers!